All right, welcome everyone to today's lunch talk where we're welcoming inspiring people from inspiring brands to talk about celebrating CX with us. My name is Barbara van der Linde. I'm part of Mage4 and I'll be your host of today. And I'm super happy to introduce that we have Anna Borbotko from TomTom today, who is going to tell us all about the art and science of the developer experience. So before I hand over to her, just a quick question and reminder for those who are joining in more often to just mute yourself for the duration of the chat. And if you have any questions or comments in the meantime, feel free to post them in the Zoom chat and we will definitely spend some time at the end to go through them. Anna, whenever you're ready, you can start sharing your screen and take it away.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Barbara. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Let me quickly set myself up. As always, takes a couple of seconds. I hope you can see my screen. The usual drill, you know, the bingo, the online bingo. In any case, hi everyone. And thanks so much, Barbara and Agnes, for inviting me and speak today. I'm going to be speaking on the topic of my heart. I've been giving this talk a couple of times already, so I'm very happy to share it with a, let's say, smaller audience today. And in today's talk, I will be speaking about Mission Possible, and that's the science behind feedback gathering from developers, and specifically on products such as APIs and SDK. I promise it's not going to be technical, and it will be very easy to digest, and I hope to leave you lots of practical tips at the end, so hopefully you can use them in your projects. A little bit about myself, not too much, is that I'm a product marketing leader at TomTom, and TomTom currently changed a lot since the moment of our big, let's say, innovation that happened with the personal navigation devices. But that's business, unfortunately, slowly dying, unfortunately. And today we're actually shaping the world of mobility and automotive, as well as other clients. We work with Uber, Microsoft, as well as smaller companies. And today we provide basically maps traffic and in a form of a data or services such as APIs. I have background in marketing and business. That's always been something I'm passionate about, but I always work for tech companies. And I have several experience in go-to-market strategies for international high-tech companies and local startups. I'm residing in Amsterdam, something that city is dear to me, but I'm originally coming from Russia. And when it comes to product marketing, because that's what I'm very passionate about, I really like doing positioning and messaging. And recently, for the last 2 years since I joined TomTom, I've been working on feedback gathering project and trying to improve our developer experience in a B2B and B2D environment, making it scalable and accessible to all the relevant stakeholders. We have 3 topics that I will be taking you through today in a quite concise manner. Today, I will be telling you a story of Mission Possible, and we will cover the situation that happened in TomTom, what was our challenge, and what was a result, and some practical tips of that result, as I promised you already. And without further ado, I will want to give you a little bit of context, what's happening in TomTom today. So TomTom has a very diverse product portfolio. You can't compare those products easily. They have different jobs to be done, different use cases, and they fit differently in different markets. A lot of word different. And we, as I said, we have APIs. We also have SDKs and some data services. Apart from that, what also happens is that we sell to B2B customers and B2D. So we don't really have a customer-facing interface where where users can directly interact with our services, just because we provide software components. So we don't sell software as such. So we sell software components, and therefore it makes it a little bit difficult to really build those sophisticated analytics. And at the same time, we as product marketing team and product management are constantly looking for user feedback and information so we can improve our products or build new ones. So both functions are constantly hungry for some user information, basically. But like everything there is a challenge, and many organizations have a dedicated customer success team that constantly working on feedback activities. If you don't have that, typically that responsibility then relies in product marketing team or product management. So basically it's a bit scattered. And in TomTom, we don't have a dedicated customer success team. And as already mentioned, the challenge is that we don't have a user application where we can see all these great, let's say, user behaviors. But at the same time, we do have a sales team and a developer portal. And lastly, feedback is just all over the place. And that's not because we are completely disorganized and chaotic. That's not the case. But it's just because there's just so much information out there that is presented in different sources and tools and in different formats. So that's why it makes our landscape a little bit complex. So I wouldn't dare to say concrete how many developers we have at TomTom, but I would just say 50%, and we have a lot of developers. And so before we really started on, okay, how can we tackle this challenge? We decided to check with our own internal developers of how or what will be the best way to collect feedback. So we also spoke to business teams and product managers and to see, let's say, what exactly do they require and what kind of feedback they want. And all teams, as a result of those conversations, said to us that, look, if you ask for feedback, you also have responsibility to act on that feedback. And of course, lots of things depends on the quality of feedback, but generally, this is what happens. And if nothing is happening for a long time, so let's say you ask for feedback, but then you don't really act on it, then people don't really want to share it anymore because they don't really see any action. So this makes feedback gathering activity even more complicated. Now, we didn't put our hands down. We decided, okay, let's tackle this in a, let's say, let's use our creative thinking. So we scratched our head and we decided to come up with a 3-step approach to feedback gathering activities at TomTom. And first, what you need is you need a developer experience index, a set of metrics that is measured and analyzed on a regular basis. You also need to establish a conversation with developers through actions. And lastly, you also need to build a learning community, both internally and externally. I will take you now through all of these steps in a great detail. So let's start with step number 1, which is developer experience index. Developer experience index, or DXI, is something that we didn't really, let's say, steal from big consulting reports. We also didn't really read any smart books about it. This is pure TomTom improvisation or TomTom invention. That's something that we just pioneered just now. Maybe this is something that other tech companies also do. They just call it differently, but this is the way we see things. So what you have is 5 stages of developer journey. You have a discovery stage that's related to everything, let's say, marketing teams do a very hard job on. And that's answer to a question, okay, do I really want to use this product? Do I need this? Will it help me solve my problem? Next stage is typically onboarding. Okay, if I decided that this product works for me, how can I get started and how can I start trying it? At the same time, we also see that documentation can be also part of the onboarding for developers, but oftentimes we put it as a sort of separate and on its own, just because it's such a crucial element for developers when they decide whether they want to be part of your, let's say, user base or not. And another part is support, because if I'm as a developer struggling, how can I get help and can I get it quickly? And lastly, if a developer sticks to your organization, you want to measure his loyalty to the brand and to the products. Different stages of DXI are based on a set of quantitative and qualitative metrics. No surprise here. So typical Net Promoter Score, CS, CSAT, etc. But of course, all these metrics mean nothing unless you have sentiment analysis. And based on experience that we have today, we have a lot of comments. Sometimes they don't make any sense at all. And unfortunately, we didn't really find yet the most sophisticated tool that can really help us with sentiment analysis in the best shape possible. So today, a lot of things still are done manually. If you have one, please let me know. I would be very curious to explore it. But what is DXI? Like, so why did we even come up with DXI in a first instance? And first of all, it's just effortless for developers. It's just one click plus a text field somewhere on the developer portal where they can instantly give us feedback. It also happens in real time, so that if they're building products, they can just react immediately instead of waiting for us to send a survey, or they have to, let's say, go and try to find a contact with us. It's also consistent because then you can easily compare different data sources and different data. And lastly, it's just more like a pull approach versus push approach, where users not feeling forced to give feedback. In effect, they're giving in a channel to share it with us if they feel like it. So it was a lot of theories, and now I want to sort of try to make it tangible and how it approximately looks like. So how do you actually collect DXI? So as I said, we established different metrics. And for example, on each documentation page on our developer portal, we have a thumb up, a thumb down, buttons where developers can basically give us whether they like the page or not in the documentation. And they also get a text field to indicate what exactly wrong with that page or with that documentation piece. And it nicely comes in this dashboard that you can see on the right. And now I know that Market has more sophisticated tools when it comes to feedback gathering, but we didn't really find yet the one that satisfies all our needs that we want and all our requirements. Maybe we just put the bar too high. But let's just say that today we use Power BI for our dashboards. We use Mopinion as a source to collect the feedback. And we use Salesforce for additional input that we are unable to collect with Mopinion today. So what do you think we achieved so far in 6 months thanks to DXI? Actually, we collected a lot of data, we analyzed it and figured that some of our products are not positioned correctly. So that's what we are busy right now, is just putting different products on different shelves, if we talk figuratively. We also figured that our documentation needs to be simplified. We also realized that there's just some products issues that we couldn't capture before. And finally, and in the last 2 years, we spent a lot on developer onboarding, and we thought that we did a good job. But apparently, developers were still struggling. So we are fixing this today. You would think that this is enough, but we humans always want more. And that brings me to the step number 2, which is, okay, how can we establish a conversation with developers through some of actions that we as a company can provide? Well, we noticed that from time to time we have churned users, as many other organizations, but we didn't really have any idea why they leave. We had some theories, but we didn't really have concrete facts. So we decided that it would be good to figure this out. And 2 years ago, we tried interviews with developers. We tried to issue surveys for free credits of our APIs or Amazon gift cards, but nothing was really working. So we got very frustrated because we put a lot of effort, but we would get none of the results that we want to achieve. So again, guess what? We are back to a drawing board. And this time we again reached out to our internal developers and asked them for help. And we found out that all our previous attempts were lacking a lot of things. And what typically works, let's say, in marketing, or like what they teach us in marketing with the email campaigns and let's say all the other activities, doesn't really work with developers. So one thing that they advise us to do is to introduce single-click answer email, because perception of developers about surveys is that it's something long, it's boring, and it would require a lot of effort from their side. They also told us not to push developers to be part of the surveys because they just don't like emails and spam. They also told us that engagement time really matters. So if developer is about to churn, this will be probably a better moment to approach them with this kind of survey or approach them for any kind of feedback. than when developer already churned. And because developer already doesn't really see the value of investing his time in your company because he is already sort of done with it. They also advised us to create a more personal approach instead of sending it from a generic marketing email. So they said that if you do it from developer to developer kind of approach, so like peer-to-peer, this will actually stimulate them and represent you as a company that actually interested in discussing it in a great detail. And the fact that because it's developer to developer, they speak the same language. So they have more trust in that person than rather marketing person sending that email. They also told us that, look, you need to involve developers in the process because they want to be involved in the whole journey and not just because something is not working. So you need to almost involve them in awareness stage, share them how things are going. So you almost want to take them by the hand and bring them through every step instead of just in a one single moment. We also noticed, we don't do that today at TomTom, but there are many other things that could be useful for developers, is that if you have sort of an upvoting tool where developers can actually see which features are getting upvoted and they can also contribute. So again, talking about being involved. And it especially helps them with planning their own roadmaps and their feature releases, because yeah, at the end of the day, they are building products with your products. So it's very important for them to also plan ahead. And this gives them an opportunity to have this in an open environment. And lastly, what I want to also bring is the step number 3 and talk about the learning community. So I recently read a book written by Developer Media where they interviewed a few developers, and each time on their marketing preferences, they would say, hey, you think we don't really click on ads? That's actually not true. We click on ads that attract us from either it's a cool event or something that's related to education, something that we can learn. And a lot of time, the learning happens actually in the developer community. So if you're a company that offers APIs like TomTom, we should definitely start thinking of building on developer community. And I'm not going to say, again, I'm sure if you work with developers, you know that Stack Overflow, Reddit, GitHub, these are all the typical tool channels where developers like to be and get that source of education. But we as a company as well invested in our own developer portal, and where we discuss and support our developers. Another area of exploration, sometimes forgotten or underestimated, is students and universities. Although students don't have money, one day they will be the ones founding those great companies and working for big corporates. So it's extremely important to think of that community and show them your brand already at that stage, or even earlier if possible. And perhaps students don't have the resources, but they can be invaluable if you give them the predefined tasks and let them build something with your APIs and ask them about their experience. And also, what we've noticed is that this can also have disadvantages because they might not be necessarily your target audience, and they might not flesh out all the problems that you have, but at least it might help you with some grammar-proof documentation or grammar-proof implementations. I'm almost at the end. We will shortly issue a poll to ask you if this information was helpful for your current projects or maybe future projects. So I'm very curious to hear about that. But if I could leave you with some takeaways today from today's talk, I would say that I try to equip you with tools on how to gather feedback from developers in an effortless manner and in real time. I also try to help you establish continuous dialogue with that audience, whether it's coming from product or from product marketing perspective, and that I hope you can deliver experiences that developers love. And if you're doing surveys via email, keep it short, one single click, developer to developer, text field free as an option. Use co-creation approach instead of tell us what can we do better. ask for feedback. Ask for feedback in a timely manner, and try to catch them as early as possible before they churn. And if you only need to remember one thing, remember that feedback is a gift, but at the same time, it's also a big responsibility. Thank you for being here. And I think we still have a bit of time to open the floor for your questions, and feel free to connect with me if you want in LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Anna. We do a bit of a silent clap here always, so feel free to join me. Thanks so much for sharing your insights and learnings, and also ending on that inspirational note together with us. Indeed, we have a couple of minutes left for some questions, and I see some have already been put into the Zoom chat. So let's, if you can stop sharing your screen, let's just dive into them directly.
Sure.
And I see the first question is from Agnes. And she's asking, how do you analyze sentiment? Isn't it quantitative analysis?
Yeah, so sentiment is a bit of a tricky question, because we've seen on the market there are a few that do analyze the sentiment, like, okay, is it good, is it bad, is it neutral? But when it comes to like really highlighting, okay, what are the top 10 issues? If the format of the way how, let's say, developers are very inconsistent, I can tell you, but I think all the humans are, then it becomes very tricky, because then you're trying to get that, okay, so can you please tell me, machine, can you tell me? But then it can either give you a word cloud, or it can be very, let's say, fragmented. So that's where we, for example, spend a lot of time with our own, let's say, hands, trying to really get that clarity. Because at this point in time, machines are not that sophisticated. I did see one tool called Chattermill that it is looking promising. We're gonna test it, but so far I didn't really find any like the perfect solution that could work, at least for us.
Thanks so much. I see Agnes nodding, so I think that answered the question great. And indeed, ask for the rest of us joining in. If you know any tool, please feel free to share. Let's go to the next question then, very conscious of time. I think we have time as well for 2 more questions. So let's go to the next question of Agnes. On step 2, do you already have some results on churn?
I guess I need to ask the follow-up question. What do you mean from like results on churn? Like why users are churning?
Yes. So you said that in order to reduce the the churn for developers, so they don't leave basically, or that you put the step 2 in place, right? And yeah. I was wondering if you were measuring that, and if there are any results, and how did that look?
Yeah, so it depends on product. The answer on everything depends. But we know on a high level why, let's say, they're churning. So identify the key areas, and also quick wins and long-term ways how we're gonna solve it. But if we let's say go deeper from the high level to like, let's say, product per product, then we see that there are many reasons. So let's say one of them is that product was not positioned correctly, that we thought it's for this audience, but actually has to be for the other audience. Or that the product is quite complex, so we need to sort of reshuffle it a little bit from like different category to another category and make it more visible, maybe even rename it so that people actually understand it instead of confusing it with something else. So like sort of the more product, or like the more customer segment you go, the deeper and the better you can sort of touch point and change things and see if that happens.
And how do you prioritize what you're going to start with? Because I can imagine if you say that there are so like many details, and when you deep dive, then it's even more interesting insights. So how do you prioritize in such a large scale?
It depends on your organization, right? Because if it's a large organization, you can tackle it by different teams, and also on the matter of strategic priorities. So we have certain products that are strategic, and so therefore we think that it makes sense to start with them. If you're a smaller organization, I can imagine you don't have so many helping hands. So again, depending on where your strategy as a company lies in, you want to probably, if you have one product, I think that's easy. If you have a product line with multiple products, you just need to decide, okay, which product has the biggest potential in the market or within your target audience, and then you start twiddling it, basically. Did that answer your question, Agnes?
Yes, yes. I just was wondering also how you exactly in TomTom, how do you go about it? Because and who decides what initiative goes first?
Okay, that's a good question. Again, it depends on strategic priority. So if it's a very strategic initiative where it's a strategic product, strategic market, usually, and which business unit, because again, TomTom is quite big. So if it's related to big strategic product that covers multiple business units, of course that will have a priority. Also depends on the customers, right? If you have a lot of strategic customers asking for specific improvements, or they want something now and not yesterday, then that way you also can prioritize. Of course, the smaller the impact, the less attention you get to it. So yeah, I think that's not different from any other organization in that sense.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I think we have a question from Niall.
From now, indeed. I saw as well. I see that we are all already at 30 past, but let's quickly indeed go through this last question. Asking if you have any measurable targets or KPIs for the program, or is it more focused on ongoing improvement?
Yes, our main KPI for this is to increase our product adoption. So we actually have two KPIs, is active users and product adoption and churn rate. These are the sort of the three that we focus on in order to see whether we are progressing or we actually didn't make any improvement. Did that answer a question?
I saw a thumbs up, I think.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
All right, and a concise answer for the very last minute that we had today. Thanks so much, and thanks Agnes and Al for contributing the questions. Thank you so much, Anna, for coming over and sharing your insights and learnings with us. Really appreciate it. Last thing that rests me to do is to launch a quick poll to ask about everyone's experience for today. And indeed, what Anna already introduced, how useful is the content of this talk for your current and future projects? Just a bit of a quick survey and understanding your reasoning of attending today. I want to thank everyone for joining in. Wishing you a great rest of your day. Hopefully seeing you next week where we're having another Celebrating CX lunch talk. And thanks so much for joining in. Goodbye.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.